Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. A split decision draw. Split decision draw. I can't believe it. I'm actually at a bit of a loss for words. When that result was called out, I kind of had a, what the moment. It just kind of was. I was like, what? It wasn't the result I was expecting. It was a fantastic fight. A great fight. Much better than many expected. It delivered on the action, the intrigue. Fantastic fight. It had drama. Fury was boxing Wilder's socks off, made Wilder look very silly for points in the fight. Deontay Wilder, with that one-hitter quitter, he came back, knocked Fury down in the 9th round, and then he almost had him out of there in the 12th round. But even despite of that, I thought that Tyson Fury was going to win this fight on points. And he almost did. And if you've been following this channel for any length of time, you know I was picking Deontay Wilder to win this fight, somewhere between rounds 8 and 10. I thought it would play out much the way that it did, that Tyson Fury was going to look good, he was going to slow down and eventually get clipped. I thought that he would win most of the rounds before getting stopped. And actually, I thought he did win most of the rounds. There was round 2, which was fairly even, but apart from that, until the 9th round, I found it very hard to give Deontay Wilder a round because he just wasn't doing much. He was loading up on the right hand. He wasn't really landing much of note. And Fury, through his activity, he was working his jabs. He was making Wilder miss. He was countering Wilder. He was doing more. He was winning the rounds in my view. And even in spite of those 2 knockdowns, and that 12th round knockdown, that was brutal. I didn't think Fury was getting up from that. He looked out. I think he was out. He barely beat the count. He got up and he continued. And by the end, he looked like he was, really putting it on Deontay Wilder. And potentially he might have Wilder in a bit of trouble. Because Wilder, late in the fight, he was gassing. He was really gassing. And it's quite interesting because it was quite a low volume fight right through from the start through the first 6-7 rounds. It was a fight that favored Tyson Fury in terms of the pace. Deontay Wilder wasn't doing enough to keep Fury moving, keep him backing up, doing enough to make him work. Fury was fighting at his own pace and it was suiting him down to the ground. And I spoke about this in some of my preview videos that Deontay Wilder needed to do some specific things. The jab. He needed to work the body. He needed to stay active and keep Fury working. He basically did none of those things, and it played right into Fury's hands. In those knockdowns, round 9 and round 12, I thought even in spite of that, that would have been enough for Tyson Fury to get the decision. And one judge had it 115-111. 115-111. I mean, what fight was he watching? If you take away those 10-8 rounds, those 2 10-8 rounds, he had Deontay Wilder winning a pile of rounds, and I just didn't see it. I'm sure most people would agree that Tyson Fury was putting on a clinic for much of that fight. He was boxing masterfully at times. The feints, the jab, the movement, it was all bamboozling Deontay Wilder. He just didn't have an answer, and after the fight, Wilder said, I was rushing my punches, I was rushing them and I couldn't get them off how I wanted. And Jim Gray, Showtime announcer said, you looked like you were just loading up for that right hand and that was the only thing you were doing. And Wilder said, yeah, I was just rushing my punches. But Fury, in my view, I thought he deserved to win this fight. So this result, very deflating in a sense, because as soon as he got up from that 12th round knockdown, I thought, incredible powers of recovery. If he can get through this, it's an incredible comeback story. It's still an incredible comeback story. Tyson Fury, I think we've got to give him a lot of credit here. He looked pretty fantastic tonight. His comeback, his 3rd comeback fight, this was a spectacular performance. And sure, he got clipped a couple of times, but lesser men have not gotten up from those punches. And a lot of people wouldn't have. I think that first knockdown in round 9, it was a right hand that started things off. Then it was a really good left hook that landed, followed by another right sort of clipping across the head. And Fury, he was off balance and looked to sort of trip over his foot. A legitimate knockdown, but it didn't look like a knockdown that, he was necessarily that hurt from. Whereas the other one, right hand, just boom. And then it was the left hook that really almost took his soul. He was on the ground. He looked done like a dog's dinner. So Fury getting up from that, Fury having boxed, fantastically for 10 of 12 rounds. And we must remember, in round 10, after that knockdown in round 9, Fury dominated. And towards the end of the fight, Deontay Wilder was visibly gassing, which I was a little surprised about, but Tyson Fury was able to box effectively. He took Wilder's jab away, and subsequently he took some of Wilder's arsenal away. Wilder could not sort of gauge the distance for that right hand, and he was often throwing it too looping. There wasn't enough straight punches from Deontay Wilder in this fight. And Wilder seemed to have some trouble adjusting to sort of punching up, because normally he's the guy punching down. But it was certainly an interesting fight, because Fury, he did exactly what he said he would do. He said he was going to put on a clinic, that he was going to try embarrass Deontay Wilder. I mean, it's debatable whether he embarrassed him, but certainly at points there when Deontay Wilder was wildly swinging and missing, and there were several moments of that in this fight, I was thinking, okay, Tyson Fury, if he can maintain this, he's going to win this fight, because it looked that decisive, it looked that clear. That round 9 knockdown, that certainly shook things up, and I thought, okay, the script, which everyone predicted, or a lot of people were predicting about a Wilder stoppage in that sort of territory, it was going to play out, but it didn't. But, in that round 12 knockdown, I thought Deontay Wilder's going to escape this again, but Fury got up. So, I mean, the result, it took an age for that decision to come. 115, 111 from one judge. 114, 110 from another judge. That was to Fury. The first one was to Wilder. And that second card, that was more in line with my own. And the third judge, which was the British judge, from what the commentary was saying, 113, 113. Split decision draw. I bet the money for that was pretty good. And some people will sort of be rolling in with their conspiracy theories here, saying that this was always the result that was going to play out, that Wilder was never going to lose the decision on the cards. Certainly, I think that 115, 111 judge, well, certainly he needs his head read, because that was a terrible scorecard in my view. What did you have the cards at? Outside of the 2 knockdowns, how many rounds did you actually give Deontay Wilder? I didn't think he was doing enough. He was missing all the time. He wasn't really jabbing. He was landing the odd shot. But most of his work was coming up short. Tyson Fury was managing to bamboozle him early and often and right throughout the fight. But Deontay Wilder would not be denied. He eventually did land some shots. But Tyson Fury becomes another man who has taken Deontay Wilder 12 rounds. We mustn't forget that. He's got up. He's come to the Lion's Den in the United States. He's got out of there. And he's escaped with a draw. He would have preferred to escape with a win, and he said after the fight, I believe that I won this fight. But he said, he wasn't going to disrespect Deontay Wilder. He wasn't going to say anything controversial. And in terms of a rematch, because that's the big question now, what are we going to have? Is that going to happen next? Well, we don't know. But certainly Wilder and Fury were both pushed on this. So Wilder said he would love it to be his next fight. He said, we need to do it again. Whatever makes the most money, I think we can do it again. And that was in reference to where would the rematch be, United States or United Kingdom. And then he said, I think I'd like to do it in America again. And Fury, he said, 100% we will do the rematch. But he said he needed to go away, have a break over Christmas, and have a think about what next. But he mocked Anthony Joshua at the end, sort of saying, bok, 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 me and Deontay Wilder are the ones that showed up. Where are you, Joshua? All that sort of thing. But in terms of, is Deontay Wilder going to But in terms of Deontay Wilder and a potential Anthony Joshua showdown, well, that seems slightly more remote now, given that there's this draw that's just happened. And Tyson Fury, from what we understand, has a rematch clause. And given that result, given how dominant he was at times in that fight, and how many people will feel that he was robbed in this fight, you would imagine that he would want to exercise that rematch clause. So Deontay Wilder has escaped from the skin of his teeth. A lot of people will say after this fight that, Deontay Wilder is a right hand and a right hand only. And for points in the fight, that's how it looked. Once Fury disarmed him, took that away for large stretches of the fight, Deontay Wilder didn't have a lot of answers. And certainly he was fading badly in the latter stages of this fight. His eye was also closing up. But, I've got to say, overall, it was a fantastic fight. It certainly wasn't, I was expecting it to be a bit more, I don't want to say dull, but there was more action in this fight, and Tyson Fury took it more to Deontay Wilder than I was expecting in my wildest dreams. So Fury, And I don't want to rave on about this like Fury's the best thing since sliced bread, because I was picking Wilder in this fight. And I think Deontay Wilder should count his lucky stars that he's got away with this one. But Tyson Fury, will he take on Deontay Wilder again? It remains to be seen. Can he keep his demons, his depression and other urges at bay? Can he go for another rematch, another big fight with Deontay Wilder, say, in March or April? We'll have to see. Can he get himself up for that? Because he said every time that there's a big high, there's a big low. But something like this is something in the middle. This is not a high or a low, because clearly he was a winner no matter what happened here, because fantastic performance. He got here, he climbed to the mountain, he looked fantastic. It was way better than I was expecting. Deontay Wilder, meanwhile, I think he will be feeling very fortunate. He actually said after the fight that because of the 2 knockdowns that he thought he'd done enough to win the fight. I got to disagree with him. He just wasn't doing enough to win rounds. He wasn't landing much of anything in a lot of rounds. And I'm not talking 1 or 2 rounds, it was several rounds. Tyson Fury was landing more work. There will be a school of thought, though, that says, that the challenger has to come to, the champion's home territory and really take the fight, really take it to him and take the belt. I think a lot of people would say that, Tyson Fury in this fight certainly was landing a lot of shots. He was dominating the fight for large stretches, and he probably had done enough. That was my view. And coming in, I was picking Wilder. I didn't know what sort of Fury to expect, but Fury proved he's not done. If he wants to continue boxing, he is an elite level fighter. He can continue. He can continue in the heavyweight division and box at an elite level. But so this result, I've just very deflating for several reasons, which, I've obviously just gone through at length. But in terms of the, I'll just scroll down to some notes here from the other fights on the card, because I don't want to make separate videos about this. So if you've got this far, thank you. And what did you make of the Ortiz and Kaufman fight and the Joe Joyce and Hanks fight? I think we'll start with the Joyce fight, because that was really, there wasn't much to talk about. Joe Joyce, first round knockout of Joe Hanks. Joyce just walked through him and knocked him out. He did eat a few punches along the way, but he seemed to be happy to do so because he wanted to get to Hanks. And it almost looked like it was over, and it looked like Hanks was going to fall over. He managed to stay up, and then within about 20 seconds he was gone anyway. Joyce just, clipped him again, down and out. So Joe Joyce walks through Joe Hanks like many of us expected he would. And also Luis Ortiz defeated Travis Kaufman, stopped him in the 10th round in that fight. And I said before the fight, I wouldn't be surprised if it went the distance, because Kaufman is a tough guy. He's a very durable guy. Ortiz boxed, well throughout. He was dominating the fight, and he knocked Kaufman down a few times. His straight left hand was just deadly. He was really putting it on Kaufman at stretches. And actually, Kaufman looked the best in the early part of the fight, and that was when he was actually maintaining more distance and he wasn't throwing many punches. His movement was, allowing him to just sort of stay off Ortiz, give Ortiz something to think about. But the thing was, he wasn't throwing anything. He wasn't getting any of his work away effectively, and Ortiz was racking up all of the rounds. I didn't give Kaufman a round in that fight, and Ortiz dominant throughout, and eventually, final flurry in the last round, he got the job done. So it was kind of, in some respects, a disappointing undercard for me, because, the televised part, that is, I don't know what actually happened on the untelevised portion, but in terms of Joyce, we expected him to win. He did. In terms of Ortiz, we expected him to win, and he did. And they were heavy favourites in those fights, and it really gets you questioning, why did they even make those fights? And we were talking about this before the fight, and it happened exactly how we thought it would. Overmatched opponents, getting beaten pillar to post, and in Hanks' case, he was taken out very quickly, but Kaufman, basically a walking heavy bag for almost 10 rounds, didn't really show a lot, and Ortiz really put on a clinic in there, was dominating him throughout. So let's hope both those fighters end up actually doing something noteworthy in their next fights. Let's hope there is actually opponents that are better matches for them. We know Joyce is, even though he's a 7-0 prospect, he's not really a prospect anymore. He's accelerated his sort of developmental phase because of his age. He's 33 years old. He needs to get a move on, get cracking here. And same with Luis Ortiz. He actually got $375K for this fight, which was doing well given it was Travis Kaufman, and Kaufman got $125K. So in terms of, the money that they got, Ortiz, he's probably happy with the level of risk that he was facing for the coin that he got. Joyce only got 40k for his efforts, and Hanks, the loser, who got knocked out in half a round, 50k. I mean, what do you make of that? Okay, so I'm going to come down from my soapbox here. I'm going to wrap this up, but let's hope that Joe Joyce and Luis Ortiz are in a good fight next. But what do you make of the split decision draw? Man, I can't believe it. A lot of people are going to be crying robbery right now, and I'm not going to disagree with them, because I thought some of those scorecards, especially that 115-111, was dodgy. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.